Welcome to MundiCyberLudens. This is the first international episode and the fifth episode of this strange thing that we are trying to build in our minds and in the minds of the people that is so full to follow us here today live or in the future in the post-apocalyptic world that we will live probably in the future, and you will see these absurd things that we are saying here today. Today with our fantastic guests, we will speak about a tutorial in which we will try to investigate and to give the opportunity to understand how to dominate the minds of flying rabbits in the war of the southern China Sea. Right, Robin?
Yes,
this
absolutely.
is the absolute ludic essence of the day.
of today.
Okay, jokes apart. I am Fabio Belsanti. I am the madman and the king of fool. And today we will try to speak about the essence of the divine creation of games. What the feelings and what stay in lights and shadows of this very big topic. And we have a special, very important guest today, is Marta Fijak, a great game designer. And now we can do the first step, that is to start with level 1. Also, okay, the topic is so big, so vast. We can move in a lot of directions. Behind of me, there's a big map of a huge fantasy world that I designed a lot of time, a lot of years ago. And there is an essence of the concept of the start point to make game design. Just because we have to start from something. Now, I will show you a trailer of one of the games that we developed inside of this big background that will be re-released in the coming days at the end of April, and the official press release will be officially released tomorrow. So just to have a point to start from and ask to the other guest what are the essence of the first light of creation of game, and why we start with games, and how that are a lot of different point to discuss and to go inside. Okay. Let's go with this starting point that is a little video games, an action, a classic fantasy hack and slash RPG. Honestly, I have to apologize for this marketing because, as I told, also in the Italian part of the projects, there are a lot of conflicts about the fact that we love to develop games and be God in this in this phase, but at the same time the need to sell them.
Yes. to eat and survive.
But this is one of the things that we have to do in this capitalistic game that we'd like to talk about, also to change the rules inside as a game designer of this quite imperfect system. Anyway, this is just a starting point to talk about the topic, as I told before. Now, we have a little intervention of Kremo, that is one of the cyberscrivens guy, that today is in an amazing island of Ibiza. Just want to do a little introduction about his travel in another part of the world. So, Luca, please.
Ciao a tutti, vi faccio un saluto internazionale. Un saludo internacional a todos los espectadores y todos los diseñadores de juegos. Ahora estoy en Formentera, que es la mejor isla de las Baleares de España. Greetings to all the viewers and game designers. Now I am in the best isle of Baleares, Formentera, in Spain. Ahora voy a mostrarles algo que puede ser de inspiración para todos. This is the landscape of Formentera. Something that can inspire you. Ahora tengo que desconectar porque por algo technical problems y porque no tengo ahora conmigo la recarga del celular. Now I have to disconnect myself because of something problems, and I haven't with me the cell phone charger. So, muchos besos a todos, kisses e un saluto e ci vediamo alla prossima. Alla prossima.
Grazie.
Ciao.
Grazie. Okay, fantastic. Now that we have this intervention in 3 languages without any order, now we reached a very high point of the chaos and absurdity of our talks and format MundiCyberLudens, but this is the essence probably of MundiCyberLudens. Luca Kremo is a sci-fi writer, and I believe that the fact that today he did this kind of intervention is part of his method to no, really, because he does a lot of travel during the year. I'm sure that a lot of backgrounds that he explore in reality are part of his stories. So it's one of the point of create a game that usually is not just to talk about games and video games. I consider, and we consider as a project, also as a video games and culture, all the narratives games that the author does with the mind of the players. That's a very important point. Okay, so now starting from what we have seen, and so some points that are also can be defined in trivial, banal, like a fantasy setting that repeat the styles of other. I would like to ask to Marta. We did a lot of meetings with Marta. Not really. Not a lot. Some meetings, but
a fair amount, please.
Yeah.
And there will be more.
But there are a lot of things that I never asked to you, and I understand that there are a lot of things that I'm interested to explore about the process that you have as a game designer. So when you start the first part of creation of something new, the spark that gives life to a new project, in that point, do you like to be and to feel to be in some way a god?
First of all, before I answer, hello to all of the viewers from the capital of post-apocalyptic vibes, Poland, and also thank you for this blast from the past of nostalgia of this trailer. A lot of nice memories got unlocked seeing that kind of a gameplay. So that's one thing. And as for feeling a god, contrary to that, when I start a game, when I start making a game, I feel mostly as a storyteller because in the end of the day, games are a storytelling medium. So what I do is I follow kind of a pyramid of important concepts proposed by Jesse Schell. He's a game designer and an author of the famous book, The Art of Game Design, the Book of Lens, but this part is not in the book. That kind of states that the core element to establish in a game is the fantasy. The player fantasy understood as what is the type of experience we want to give to the player, right? I want the player in a simplistic form. I want them to be a knight. I want them to be a skater. I want them to be a frog looking for his wife. There's a lot of little that kind of experiences I want to give. In terms of Frostpunk, I want to put the player, give them the experience of being a leader in an apocalyptic situation. So face them with those hard decisions. And this is the core of the game. The creation part, kind of like the world building, comes far, far later because sadly or not sadly, those things are functional towards the fantasy. So what I establish first is the fantasy, what kind of actions it translates to. So if I say you're going to be a judge, then the action you are going to do is pass verdicts. Then I will try to dress it up in mechanics. And the law comes after that. The law may change repeatedly during the creation of the game. Of course, there is this difference when you are walking, like we both talked about living in the lovely system of capitalism, the game that we all played. So sometimes the setting comes from the outside as a form of a lovely IP that we have to play around with. And then the setting is kind of unmovable. But getting back to the divine question of divine creation, I a lot more feel like a play director. You know, as a theater director, the only problem is that my actor does not know that he's playing in a play. As terms of the player, because the games are smoke and mirrors. We pretend to be the vast sea of possibilities. We pretend to be extremely responsive and adapting and creating this unique experience for the player. But the truth is, we use the skill of our craft to make them play the part that we have written for them. So I think it's a more of a devilish role than a divine one to play.
So the first part of game designer, this is one of the big conflicts that in me, is that we are illusionists.
Yes.
And so in be illusionist, we are very far from be divine. It's supposed that to be divine, you have something of, well, in a monotheistic way, you must be the truth. But this is one of my conflict, because when I create something, I would like to create something that is not the truth, but a little part of it that can give something of truth to us, and is exactly the opposite. The art to build a great experience in that mind that you want to pilot, to direct that experience in that mind.
I think in every form of artistic expression, be it games or books or movies, there is, at least in the one that touched me in a meaningful way, there is that core of truth. There is something below the experience, that kind of a nugget we want to translate, we want to show. We want to show how people, how we as humans view a certain issue, how we want to describe it. But in all of the arts, how we do it is a lie, an illusion, and a set of smoke and mirrors. Because we pretend that our characters in the books have vast, rich life. We say, oh, they feel lifelike, but they are not. It is a lie. It is a part of our craftsmanship to make them like that. We make our game worlds to feel lifelike, to be like, oh, the Red Dead Redemption space, it's a true Western, American, whatever, cowboy shit. It's not. This is, the I think of all of the crafts, we transport people to a lie that is based on truth, in a way. That's quite absurdist, but I think it's fitting.
Yes, a lie that is based on truth. That is the also the chance that we have usually with the suspension of belief. That is a classical, it's a paradigm of the design for narrative and game design for
all the
everything
media. You cannot test the suspension of disbelief. This is why, on a personal note, I have big problems with narrative that requires to suspend the disbelief twice, as in the world of the game, the actions are also not true. I'm sorry, this is like a personal vendetta against, for example, the type of narrative that are in Vanishing of Ethan Carter. I don't know if you know that game.
No.
It's like 10 years old, so I'm going to spoil the hell out of it.
No problem.
In the end, you find out it was all a child's dream. And this is for me the biggest sin against the suspension of disbelief, because we do not lie once, we lie twice to the player, and that's a little bit too much.
But so when you coming back to the moment in which you are creating a game, not a I know when you worked on Frostpunk, you were inside of a company with a scope, so you could not be God in a bigger sense, obviously. But talking about an idea that you are free without all the problems that we have usually of market and etc. To think of something that must be must reach our niche or a vast part of the public. Have you ever this desire to start a game not in the with this limit of delusion, and so start from another point of view to try to be in some way a god, or do you think that this is impossible for the media in general? I mean the feeling, not the limit, but the feeling, the joy. Maybe that you don't want this kind of joy that is also don't have only lights, but also the dark side of this creative joy to be this kind of designer.
If not the joy of the creation, I wouldn't go to be a game designer. I would stick to academia and me abusing plants. So, as a geneticist. So that joy is definitely there. But I have to say that the approach to creation is not vastly different because I've been a creative director for a few years. I went through the process from the ground up, building something twice already in this company only. I did it also before. The budgets are different, but in the end of the and I also did it many times on my own with my personal projects and my personal games. There is a topic I want to explore. There is an experience I want to, for myself, check out very deeply, and I think it is an interesting thing to tell to another person, to ask them questions, because games are good to ask a question, are a good medium to ask questions in a way. So what changes between the big project, the big dollars and all of those double A's is how niche the experience is. I want to see, but not much more. Of course, I cannot talk about the big projects due to the NDA and IPs and all of that, but for my personal projects, for example, I wanted to show the player, like, I created a game for artistic collective Absurd Games. The idea was to kind of put the games on their head and create an absurdist experience. So again, I came from the experience. I know the players love city builders. I know the players love to be in that point of control. So I wanted to give them the experience of not being the one in control, but being the little builder that goes around and build things. So it's kind of a play on the player agency. Now I'm making a small horror game about Soviet housing block. I don't know if you have those, but we live in those high rises, but poor high rises of many flats. Like I'm right now on the 6th floor. So this was the starting point, but then again, I drew out the space and came again from the fantasy. What I want to tell the player. What is the story that usually lives inside of this block? And let me spoil that for you, as this is a Soviet-inspired thing, nothing good. Everything is bad. But yeah, kind of those. I live in something similar, actually.
Yes.
As I told you, my part of the country is, my part of Europe is grey. We don't have other colors.
And on this, so there's this link between the history,
Yeah.
the story, the experience, and also the problem of confusion between, because the suspension of belief today in our cyberluden society is breaking all the walls between the experiences. Because probably one time I listened in a movie that it seems was a movie on a real problem in the United States, that and there was a girl that told in the movie that yesterday I saw a beautiful film, a beautiful movie about the history in the Middle Ages of Europe. I saw The Lord of the Rings.
Yes. I think even Snoop Dogg said that, but I think the amount of weed in his life may impact that. He thinks no, he thought that Game of Thrones was a documentary about medieval times.
Yeah.
But the amount of weed does the trick.
Yeah. Yes, but all this, and on this, I'd like to introduce and ask to our friends and cyber scrivens creator,
Hi, everybody.
Maico. I'd like to ask to Maico, what kind of creator and god do you believe to be? More an illusionist or more a divine power of truth when you try to build your stories in your books? Also, Maico is a very important sci-fi writer in Italy, and with me and Luca is founder of Cyberscriven Collective.
Well, I was just wondering, listening to what Marta and you said just a few minutes before. I was just wondering because when I write something, when I start build a new world for my settings, in the last month when we start talking about world building and other stuff about creation and writing, I start thinking at myself like a kind of fixer, and I would like ask to Marta if it's the same for that he feels sometimes when she made game design. I start thinking that for me, build a world of fantasy or science fiction, or trying to imagine a future based on what we have around in the present. It's a way for me to fix some problems that I see around me. It's a way maybe to fix, to put order in a strange way, because a lot of things that I write are not properly happy, are dystopic, are strange words. But I see myself trying to put order, to create a connection between what is and what could be. And I ask you, Marta, if you feel the same sometimes, if you need also to try to put order with your game design skills and with the fantasy and all the lore that you put in your works.
So there are two sides of this. First, in the part of the order, I'm a system designer, and seeing world as set of systems and the games of so designing systems in games kind of allows you to look at the world as a set of systems that are getting more and more complicated. We cannot understand, but still it is an inherently ordering process. If you put things in little boxes that are connected to each other and they're like, yay, this adds to that, it gives a full sense of security, because the systems of our lives are absolutely not understandable, especially now with the rapid AI, and it was that for the past 10 years. But that is one thing that gives me a form of peace. And in terms of trying to communicate something that I see more optimistic, more hopeful, or I would like to more people to look at it, because I think it may make things better. Yeah, definitely. This is something, for example, with Frostpunk. With Frostpunk, I did the Society, and I was a lot younger, a lot more cynical than I am now, a lot more, postmodernism back then. So there are just two tastes of future in there. You can bring order with totalitarianism, or a church-flavored form of totalitarianism. And now, if I would make this game again, I would try to explore different approaches to cooperation and community. And you probably saw that now in sci-fi and post-apo, there's this new trend, very lovely one, that this world after the apocalypse is not Mad Max. It's a hard world, but of cooperation and form of hope. And this is the thing that I also like to explore in my games, especially that when we look around, we are living in very fun times. We can make a list of fun things happening around. So kind of exploring how this shitstorm may have a happy ending is an uplifting thing, but also I hope maybe inspiring for someone, that it's not doom and gloom. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, me too. I'm trying to be more optimistic, especially from the moment that I studied mushrooms. It's before Last of Us. I specified that. I read some books about mushroom, and I was very, very fascinated about their cooperation and the way they build this web that
the mycelium.
Yeah.
And Maico, you are talking to a biologist, so
okay.
With a huge fixation on mushrooms, to be truthful. So,
okay,
yeah.
so
They are beautiful, and they are very resilient also.
Yeah, totally.
There are great aspects, and they are not as scary as The Last of Us puts it.
No, so in fact, I think
and
so.
there are also so magic, these mushrooms.
There are many types of, both in cooking and in magic.
And I don't know what you're talking about.
No one knows. I read it in a book.
Yeah, a lot of books.
Absolutely. The control in games and hope. One of the things that the paradoxes of that I experienced as a game designer during several years of foolish developments. One of the most interesting paradoxes, I think, is that we have also the concept of the game from the Zingarelli problem and the problem of definition of game, etc. But we play games because there are clear rules about. Okay, yes, it's more complex.
The definition thing is my thing. The game definition horse is something that I can jump on. But let's go to the important part. Let's go to the clear rules.
Yes, the definition, biologist, science. Yes, I know. Definition is something. Yes, I know. I am a poor historian, humanistic,
humanistic.
That navigate in the absolutely absence of any definition. And this is one of the point of game design, of the most interesting part, that usually we love to control things, and we play in this world with walls and rules, and we can control. But also as a game designer, when I play my games, to make the boring part of playtesting, one of the most funniest part is when you add this kind of randomness, unexpected things, and when you lose control, you have fun. And this is a game of reality, because in reality, in our lives, we don't like the problems, the problem solving, and all the unexpected things. But often, from a romantic point of view, the unexpected things are the most interesting part of our lives, and sometimes of the games. So the paradox is I am the game designer, I am the god, but if I control everything, I don't have fun into be this kind of god. Yes, I have this kind of divine power to control everything, but it's not everything that the joy that may express the game. And this is the paradox, I think, that we have inside of the game, and the divine power to make games and stories and experience. I don't know if you feel the same during your game development process.
No, I think you touch on something very important for system design and system-driven games. And as I am a filthy scientific mind, I'm going to even give it a name. I will call it an emergent gameplay and emergent narratives, because when we conceptualize games, I'm not a fan of the mechanic dynamic aesthetic model, but this is a theoretical framework for analyzing games. But the idea is that when we have a set of mechanics systems, when we put them in motion, both due to simulation and due to players, dynamics occur. And dynamics, especially in more convoluted systems, like RimWorld, for example, are hard to predict. And this is where the emergent gameplay and emergent narratives arrives. And this is a beauty of systemic games. The prime example of that, like the grand scale of this emergent nature of systems, is Dwarf Fortress. This extremely ugly game about dwarves that generates just batshit crazy stories. I don't know if I should say but crazy stories, spanning a lot, and all of those from this unexpected connections. If you think very strongly about it, they are not unexpected, and you can kind of design for emergent gameplay, but it's always cool when your system's like, ta-da, and something that you did not expect. The more the systemic game, then the more emergent gameplay moments they will be. The first classical one, it's the Story of Legends, is the rocket jump from Quake. It's a very small emergent gameplay element, but due to the system of movement and the system of weapons and the system of blast,
I'll be generating another world
in Quake,
to do it all again, either way.
Yeah, that was Dwarf Fortress, but only the war generation. We haven't seen the dwarves yet. Due to the interaction of those three systems, the player was able to jump and shoot a rocket below them. So the explosion put them higher, and this became a very strong strategy. And this is a very simple example of emergent gameplay, this kind of ta-da moment. But huge spaces
So
about it. And this is great.
in this, technically, a power that we can take from the mind of God is the idea.
Leave the God alone.
No, it's the idea to have this power of generate seeds that we don't know exactly what is the creation of that seeds, but we have this creation power that is a parallelism also in the pillars of life, of our life, of our perception of life. Exactly when we can try to do a good son, and we have Hitler.
Just put things in the basket and set them in motions. And sometimes when you push them strong, Hitler will jump out. Yep, that's the life of game design.
And sometimes this could be terrible or worse. And on this, I have a specific question for Robin that has an academic formation about art. And if in this kind of emergent gameplay and in this world building that is in part in control, in part not, this is another question very connected to another one of the things that we are trying to explore in these years with the video games and high culture, in the redefinition of high culture, a new definition that we want to be truly democratic, and with the word democratic, we are not talking about anything that is can be defined the democracy in liberal democracy of today. I'm losing everything while I'm talking, but this is very important for me, is to understand the elegance in games. I would like to know what is today for us high culture. Because high culture, I think, is very important. Culture is a game. I start from Oettinger, absolutely, that culture precedes, that games precedes culture. And culture is born in game, as a game. But we have this concept, this idea that came from the past, maybe that a pillar of the high culture, something that I would like that every person on the earth could know, could experience, in the experience of high culture for everyone, not an high culture for the elite, but the high culture of the people. And when we start an opera, a game, and we try to mix these elements of control and emergent gameplay, could be very difficult to have an aesthetic elegant point. What do you think that in that time of brainstorming and creation could be very important to consider, to have to try to be elegant? After a lot of time when we develop, we fail, but the point that you think that we could start to consider.
Well, that is not an easy question.
No, not at all.
But while you were talking, there are two main points that came up to my mind. The first thing is we should define aesthetics again. On the hand, aesthetics the first thing that comes to mind is visuals, art, and elegant games in terms of graphic design. So games that have nice graphics or graphics that just make sense. And the second point is I personally believe that also game design, when it's done very elegantly, can be aesthetic as well. So overall, I would say, and drawing back from something that I think we discussed a couple of episodes ago, I believe that when something in general, not exclusively for games, but when a work of the human mind is coherent, consistent, and just makes sense, or at least attempt to make sense and communicates something through its interface or its visuals, then there is a high chance that that particular artifact is aesthetic or elegant, I would say. And yeah, I think that video games can absolutely do that. Also games to some extent, but I would say that with video games it's easier because you have a shared visuals with all the players that engage with that particular artifact.
Okay. Thank you very much for this synthesis. And I have, right now, Marcello gave me a paper in which I can see that I failed all the structure of the day. I did not call the level 2, and we are near the level 3. So we will have level 2 and 3 together, just because my game design also in this MundiCyberLudens is a mess.
But it was an interview. It's our first interview, so yeah.
Okay, just because I like to have something similar in the now we call the level 2, absolutely. Yeah, the discussion in the level 2, yeah, level 2. This would be the central part of the discussion that we did, but
yeah, the more consistent part of the discussion.
Okay, I have another question, very interesting. In these questions, I have just to found it. Okay, yes, this is another point that I would like to ask to you all. And this is one. How, in your opinion and experience, do the imaginary of games and video games affect the reality, history, and politics of the human beings who invent and play them? Okay, we have just 5 minutes to answer. You have about 2 minutes. Marta, tell us.
I first have to decouple the question, so just to be on the same page. So, do you ask me if the games influence the culture, or if the culture influence the game? Because yes, the idea is that you cannot, at least not now, and if that happens, I hope I will be long dead. Games are created by humans. And humans cannot be created outside of culture, right? Ubuntu, I am because we are. So games are the project of culture, and at the same time, they shape the culture because they're part of it, and they shape another set of people. So it's just, the Ouroboros of culture biting its own ass, and I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, yes, this is the circle. Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
But
I think the same tool. Back to mushrooms. It's some kind of symbiosis, maybe, from video games and culture. So, the one depends from the others, and the one makes the other better or worse in some case, I think. Yeah.
okay, so the level 2 with the central discussion is ended, and we can go to the level 3. Yeah, the conclusion.
Like
Okay, the last question that I have is this one. Let me show. I don't find anything now. Okay, that's great. Okay. Yes, this is connected to the what we say in the level 2. This is the very important one in the idea of that the importance of games and video games in our society today. And so, how important is the author's intention in the creation of a video game or narrative? Do you think that from what you told before, I understood that we all are older and older, and we take care more and more about what we are saying to people when we create games and things like this. But in your opinion, the impact of games today and the author's intention, how important is? How much important is?
I think it is the first question. Is it me or Maico?
Yes, start. You can start.
Okay, I think it's vastly important. You cannot create without intent. Of course, in many cases, this intent is in the prison of capitalistic idea in the end of the day, because many games are created just to make money, but still, to create this coherent artifact, there is intent behind every single piece of it. This intent, authorial intent and authorial voice, when intent is conscious and voice may be unconscious, is felt through the whole production. And when it's coherent, the game will be coherent, the artifact will be coherent. And I think it impacts people, right, very strongly. You can see that because they can experience those things that we give them. They live them in a sense, of course, in a simulacra way, but it touches them, it changes them. We have a lot of that kind of stories, a lot of testimonies, how games impact people in a very, very significant way. So yeah, and then we can go to procedural rhetorics, but I understand we have 9 minutes, so
And in this show, we can say that we must be good God.
We can be a malicious being. The intent does not have to be pure. Do I would like to intend to be pure? Of course I would like it. But it is not inherent to the act of the creation. And trust me, there are some bloody vile games out there with the intent to hurt, to ridicule, and to make people feel miserable. And they exist because games are mirrors to us. Like every form of art, you know.
I think in many ways, maybe I will use a strong word, but we have a sort of responsibility about what we do, and it's not necessarily a responsibility bind to the goodness of what we do, or a bright future, or something in where everything goes in the right way. But we have the responsibility to our sensibility first, and in a second way, in the way we talk to the other. I think one of the great sin that a writer can do against his readers is thinking that they are dumb and they are not smart enough to understand the reality and what he is trying to tell to them. And I think for the game design is the same in many ways.
Yep, it's the same form of communication.
Yeah.
Books are a form of communication. Games are a form of communication. Games like the big games tends to be tricky in the form of communication because they can be made by many people, but usually still this intent falls down on creative directors or game directors, and it's usually their vision. Look, the Last of Us, for example. This is the intent of a single person, more or less. And yeah, it's felt.
Marta, you are for sure more international than me. I don't know if there are just other communities of game designer that tried before to build a sort of a game designer party for politics. But I ask you all if maybe that in this ludic century that was defined a ludic century from some important philosophers and historians, that if we could need to have a sort of a game designer party for politics, and in politics to rebuild politics and unmount politics from the game design perspective.
So, as far as I know, I haven't seen a party consisting of game designers yet. We had that episode in Poland when we had a party that was called Party of Beer Drinkers. It was fairly popular. It was a form of a funny protest, but still quite successful in that form. But yeah, politics are a game, and right now there are forces who play it a lot better than other forces, and yeah, that's a longer story, very polished story that is happening everywhere around now. And I think we don't have enough time to go into that den of sadness. Yep, exactly that, dude. It's Polish party of beer friends, not beer drinkers, beer friends.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
We
we
they,
will
they,
try
they,
to.
they say we
Yeah.
are only friends. They say we are only friends. We are not. Yeah.
We will see if there's a chance during Video Games and High Culture to talk more about this internationalist game designer party. We have to find a name.
Let's go to the European Union Parliament.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, to the global world empire parliament. That will be fun for us.
From my side, I'm looking forward a science fiction writer in every government of every state of the world, maybe some kind of minister of something, a future minister or something like that. Maybe.
I have to say, when I listen, at least to our politicians, most of them are sci-fi writers. At least in the form, no, in the how realistic the things they are saying are. This is that type of sci-fi writers. They are storytellers for sure.
Yeah. Great storytellers.
The reality game. That's very imperfect and trivial and absurd, more than us. Okay, guys, thank you very much for your time and for your reflections. I thank all the people that have followed and will follow us on MundiCyberLudens, and we close from the ludic dungeon and pub of Bari, Terra di Mezzo, Middle Earth. And thank you very much, and see you in the next episode.
See you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Marta. Hi, Fabio. Robin. Hi.
Bye.
Bye.